So let us introduce to you, lovely lady, the chairman of the TTSPCA, Sita Kuruvilla. You know, I can never get
Kuruvilla.
I can never get your last name. Never. Kuruvilla. So good morning. Welcome to the Power Breakfast Show on Power 1 and 2 Digital. How are you?
Fine, thank you, and good morning to all the presenters.
Good morning, Sita.
Good morning, Ms. Kuruvilla.
Good morning.
And thanks for your continued great work with the Trinidad and Tobago Society.
Amazing
for the
work.
prevention of cruelty to animals. And thanks for the great work you do.
Thank you, Senator Richards.
Yeah, you're so official, Legio.
Pardon?
He's Power Paul on this show.
Okay.
Yeah, Super Paul. We call him Super Paul around here.
Okay, I remember.
All
But
right.
I too want to congratulate you for the good work you're doing, because at one point in time, because I sat as a member of the Port of Spain City Council for 21 years. So I'm aware of your work. I'm aware of where you are. I'm aware of how bad it was at one point in time and how much it has improved over the last few years.
It's improved, but we still have our hands full. There are lots of problems out there. And
what are your main? I'm glad you said that. What are your main challenges the society is experiencing now in terms of what's coming to you?
Well, there's just an overwhelming number of cases: unwanted animals, lost, injured, and so on. And I mean, we are taking on not just TSPCA, but predominantly TSPCA in the north, but also other NGOs. We are dealing with a system where there's a complete breakdown in the government aspect of dog control. So what we're seeing is in the last few years, certainly post-COVID, practically no corporations are functioning. So it means that really we are trying to cope with a system entirely on our own, or just us and a few NGOs, and it's impossible. It's an impossible situation.
You saying that the Port of Spain Corporation, because I would have lost touch.
Yeah.
They don't do the dog catching again to bring.
Well, they are limping along. They were down for quite. I think it was almost a year. Mm-hmm. But they're limping along now, so they are functioning, I would say, partially. None of the other corporations are functioning, however. So we are coping with cases not just from Port of Spain or the northern part of the country, but we are also dealing with cases from San Fernando, basically all over the country, because the dog control responsibilities of the corporations has just collapsed.
Wow. I know Tunapuna Piako also had a pretty vibrant dog catching unit.
Not for years. Neither San Juan Laventil, Cuba operated for a while. They're down. Part of the problem is that there are no support mechanisms for this function. So if you're going to pick up stray dogs, you have to have somewhere to take them. And it's unrealistic to expect that, a facility in North, one facility can cope with that, the influx from all over the country. So we are actually working with the Ministry of Local Government. A committee was recently formed to start looking at the whole thing all over again and look at capacity and so on. But so far, there really is nothing in place.
Sita, when you say the corporations have primarily abandoned this responsibility, what does that mean? And as of last year?
No, it's been several years now. Certainly post-COVID, but even prior to COVID, I would say from about 2018, 2019, we noticed that the corporations were no longer functioning. So that it means that they have no dog catching capability, and also that any actions that were moving forward in terms of looking at holding facilities has fallen through. So even the San Fernando pound, which is much maligned, and I mean I can understand why, is really not in a position at this point to operate. So it means that the dog control capacity in the country has, in terms of the government responsibility, is really almost non-existent.
So what have you seen because of that shortfall? Is it that you've seen a significant, steady increase of your responsibilities having to take up for that gap?
Well, certainly we have. I mean, we are, constantly on call to deal with all kinds of cases. We ourselves don't offer a dog catching service. We tend, if we call to deal with, injured animals or critical situations like that, we certainly try to respond. But we don't, we don't have the capacity to go out there and catch stray dogs from all over the country. There's a worrying development in that we see it with companies and so on, that they hire private individuals to deal with cases. And we have followed up on a few of these reports, and we can't actually find out what the private companies are doing. So that's kind of worrying. We do know of some companies that, well, let's say, trap cats and so on. Some are responsible, others just take the animals and dump them somewhere else. So, the whole thing needs to be controlled if there's going to be any kind of welfare considerations. You can't just, treat animals as so much disposable, problem or rubbish or whatever it is. You have to have a system where it operates humanely, and the outcome for the animals at the end of the day, whether it's positive or not, is at least handled humanely.
Yeah, because
Mr. Kuruvilla, tell me something.
Hold on, Rich. Yesterday, I believe it was Tacarigua, some idiot tied a dog in the middle of a field to a metal structure with a heavy chain and a padlock, and left the dog there. Fortunately, a good Samaritan saw them, and with the help of another good Samaritan, was able to release the dog, feed, give the food, the dog water, and so on. And I just do not understand why people would do something like that.
Well, the problem is, if you don't have, people will abandon animals. It doesn't just happen in Trinidad. It's all over the place. You don't want it anymore. You don't know what to do with it. You abandon it, right? If there are places, if there are alternatives, some people will take those alternatives. If they know, well, I can take the animal into this shelter or this facility and it'll be treated reasonably humanely, then that provides an alternative. If there are no alternatives, people will find a way. They will dump the animal somewhere. There's a lot of abandonment of unwanted animals in the country, so you do need to give people options. Otherwise this will just continue.
But the question I wanted to ask is, I knew the issue of abused animals and the intersect with the TTPS assisting. I don't know if there is a dedicated police unit to deal with animal welfare. I think there was one being formed when Gary Griffith was Commissioner of Police. I don't know if it still exists or if it was completely formed or not. I don't know if you could give some sort of update on that, because sometimes people may see animals being abused but not sure what to do and where to report.
Well, there is it wasn't really a unit. What Gary Griffith did at the time was allocate a responsibility to 2 officers who were to be our liaison people. And it did work for a while. Particularly one of the officers was very helpful. So either he would try and assist us, or if we had to deal with a police station in a particular district, he would try to pave the way for us to work with the police there. But that he has since been reassigned, and there really isn't any liaison person now. in terms of there are laws in place. In 2020, the Ministry of Agriculture piloted some amended legislation. It's called the Animals, Diseases and Importation Amendment Act. It's not actually the best place to have animal welfare legislation, but it was really an opportunity to get it on the books, without waiting another 20 years. So in that legislation, there's a new section that outlines the conditions for the welfare of animals. Also, the section on animal cruelty that was formerly placed in the Summary Offences Act was repealed from summary offences and placed in this amended legislation. So that legislation is really what we are looking at and hoping will be implemented. So it comes under the Ministry of Agriculture. And what we have been asking for is for the ministry to start working on it. There's a provision in the legislation for the formation of an advisory a committee that's advisory to the minister, and it has a number of responsibilities, not just animal welfare, but also for developing a plan, let's say, for dog control for the country. So the opportunities are there to at least start working on it. And it's really vital because the police service at this point doesn't, generally speaking, there's no understanding of the legislation in place or even how to go about enforcing it.
I know in some countries they have a dedicated animal welfare unit with officers who have powers of arrest and can arrest
animal cop.
Who can arrest people for how they abuse animals. But what I'm getting for you, of course, our infrastructure is not that sophisticated. And it's really, I suppose it's really on the person reporting how passionately they want the problem solved and how much they want to harass, I guess, and I'm using the word harass liberally, the TTPS to get involved in terms of coming to deal with the issue.
Well, it's the thing is, I think at the end of the day, we do need some kind of a dedicated unit because dealing with animals is not just, it's not as straightforward as people may think. If you're going to go through a process of enforcement, it means you need to know what evidence you should collect. You need to have a lot of guidelines in place and standards that you can use. So, it's something that has to be developed. We have dealt with the police on a number of occasions at different stations. And really getting any kind of response depends to a great extent on the particular individual officer that you may meet, because there isn't really enough, there's no prior history of doing this kind of taking this kind of action. So, there isn't really very much for the police to look at in terms of cases. And, there are really no guidelines offered as to what are the standards of welfare that we are assessing the animal based on. How do you collect evidence? What kind of evidence do you need? You also need veterinary support. If you're going to consider even going to court, you would need veterinary support. You would need a veterinarian to sign off and say, yes, I've assessed the animal. This is this is my report on my findings. So, there are a number of things that have to be put in place if we're going to, take any kind of action or legal action. And none of that has really been sorted through, and that has not been developed.
Ms. Kuruvilla, what is the capacity of the TSPCA compound down there, and what other animals do you house there outside of dogs?
In terms of capacity, we have about 137 dogs and puppies there, which is more than what we would, which is really more than our capacity. We don't believe in a lot of overcrowding though, because then the conditions and health of the animals deteriorates. So we are really at the maximum. So apart from dogs, we also take in cats, and we have a separate section for cats and kittens, and that's purpose built for them. Those are the only animals we take in. We do collaborate with some of the wildlife rehabilitation centers. So if we are contacted about wildlife, we know how to handle that. We also
Ricardo Mead
Ricardo Mead
from Elscoro Wildlife.
Yes, he's been he's very good. So we do collaborate. We collaborate with the veterinary community on cases where maybe there'll be let's say in a different region and we can't get to it. We do have links with certain vet clinics, so we can get we can collaborate with them if to deal with cases that are on another part of the country. And we do have experience dealing with things like cases, particularly of horses that have been abandoned, because we've been doing that for many years. We collaborate with the Animal Welfare Network. We have links with certain stables and so on. So we dealt with abandoned horses for many years when, horses that came off the track that nobody really wanted and so on.
That so pisses me off.
Yeah.
That so pisses me off. You go on the track. I don't want the horse no more. Go somewhere and let him out. I know animals are alive in South Oropouche. They have two resources that they have down there.
Yeah. So we dealt with that for many years. I think we've dealt with well over 100 and something cases of abandoned horses, which is a very expensive thing to cope with. So we've dealt with that. We try to link with the Ministry of Agriculture if we get reports of, let's say, livestock that is wandering or injured or something. So, the shelter itself is really for dogs and cats, but we have our linkages with other organizations or agencies for other animals.
But it's not limitless. So at what point is a decision made to either get these dogs homes, or in extreme circumstances, if they are diseased or sick, to do euthanizing? Because I would imagine that will be the more humanely way to go sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we get animals in every single day. And apart from, funding and so on, of course, is always a problem. But at the end of the day, it's getting a home. That is what your main stumbling block will be. If you don't get homes for the animals, then it limits how many you can take in and how many you can assist. But we often take in animals beyond our capacity because the alternative for them is very poor. People will tell us, and we hear this every day, I don't want to drop it at the side of the road. So we do try to assist people and offer them alternatives. But if they cannot take up any of those alternatives, we are forced to take in the animals. So all animals that come into us, we assess. If they're very, very young, if they're very, very old, if they're injured and so on, if they're very poor likelihood of them getting a home, we do euthanize. And people are very unhappy about it, but one has to be realistic. Where are these animals going? There's nowhere for them to go. So at some point you have to make decisions. And really at the end of the day, what we are providing is temporary accommodation with the intention of making sure that animal is in good health, well socialized, and can fit into someone's home.
Sita, just going back to the issue of the regional corporations, what is the legal responsibility in law for these regional bodies?
Yeah. Well, they operate under two laws that govern how they deal with it's mainly dog control. The corporations deal with dog control. They're not really they don't really deal with sort of animal welfare. There's the Dogs Act, which is a very, very old piece of legislation from 1917 or somewhere like that. It's been amended a few times. And that gives or mandates the corporations to pick up stray dogs. The dogs are to be held for a period of 5 days, in case the owner claims the animal. If no one claims the animal after 5 days, then a decision can be made either to try to find it a new home or to euthanize the animal. So that is the responsibility of the regional corporations. They are also responsible for implementation of the Dog Control Act, which was that legislation was developed in 2013, and that was really geared more to looking at dangerous dogs, right? That covered particularly 5 breeds of dog, mostly the pit bull, but it also created options for charging owners who have a dog that's dangerously out of control. There have been a lot of problems with that legislation. Really, nothing has been put in place to implement it. And then, even when it was proclaimed, there were a lot of concerns about some of the provisions and how feasible they were. But so basically, dog control, whether it's with stray dogs or whether it's with dangerous dogs, is the responsibility of the corporations.
Just as you raised that, Ms. Kuruvilla, there was recently a case where a dog ran out from a neighbor, from the owner's yard, and ran into a neighbor's porch, and I think mutilated a child. I think the child died. I think that was the last incident I would have heard about something like that quite recently. What would happen to a dog in that circumstance? Would you all be contacted to deal with a situation like that?
Well, we have been contacted on many occasions to deal with pit bulls or dangerous dogs that maybe have gotten away. And we had a case with some people who couldn't leave their house because there was this dog outside and it was behaving aggressively. So we do try to help where we can, or get a veterinarian to assist us and so on. Sometimes the police get involved, and then they will often call us and ask us to assist with transport or to house the animal or something. So, it's really not our responsibility as such. We run a shelter, but sometimes, depending on the situation, we will get involved. We will assist. But there have been a number of cases. We're recently looking at 2 cases where children have been attacked by dogs and been injured. And when the parents have gone to the police, they've not had any assistance whatsoever. And I think it's important that we start educating the public about their responsibilities for animals that are under their care, because it's an out of control situation, and you really can't have people put at risk by people's dangerous dogs. You're getting a lot more people wanting dogs that show aggression because they're concerned about security and so on. Now, if you're going to have a dog that is a protective dog, you do need to know how to handle it properly, and you do need to make sure that your property is secure so that people aren't at risk.
I'm wondering if they're even applying, as you said, the Dog Control Act, which prohibits the importation and ownership of certain breeds of dogs, and also deals with the interbreeding of some dogs, which have a different temperament when they're interbred and not trained properly. And that's a very dangerous situation. We've had situations in the past where adults and children have been mauled to death. And if you're saying the corporation is not doing that, that's a problem. That's a real issue. And we have a tendency to wait for a front page headline and to react and call for this and call for that and call for the other after the fact when someone is hurt or killed.
After the fact.
Yeah, well, it's a real situation. There's really no control over what's going on out there. None, none at all. Okay, so I'll tell you that quite frankly. We know dogs can come in illegally from Venezuela. When the whole husky boom started, they were initially coming from Venezuela. None
Yeah.
of the controls were in place for the movement or importation of these animals. And then, of course, there's concerns of things like rabies coming in and so on. And there's really no control, no inspection, nothing in place to monitor what is happening with breeding of dogs or ownership.
What about your resources? What kind of resources are you working with? Because if the load on your organization is increasing, is it that you get a subvention? Is it that you depend on the kindness of strangers and volunteers? How are you making out at the organization?
Well, we are an NGO, a charity. We always begging. And we're very fortunate because the members of the public have been extremely helpful. So we're always begging. We beg for things like food and cleaning supplies and that kind of thing. Of course, also financial donations. We do get some financial donations, but we operate with quite a significant shortfall between our income and our expenses. We received a subvention from the government in 2022 from local government because we really were desperately in need of doing maintenance work on the facility, and we managed to get a subvention then. We have applied again this year and really what we need is an annual subvention. We need to know that we can function from year to year because we are so cash strapped that we have to spend so much of our effort just trying to keep afloat. We have
Raising funds.
Yeah, we have a staff.
Yeah.
We have a staff who work, we cover the shelter 7 days a week and public holidays and so on. We have a full house of animals to care for. We have to pay for drugs, cleaning supplies,
So you have to apply for a subvention. Is it every 2 years or 3 years? How does it work with you?
Well, there's no guarantees about the subvention. We just have to keep asking. So we didn't receive anything last year. This year we're trying again to get a subvention. So we put in a request. So there aren't any guarantees. There's nothing like on the books that says every year TSPCA is entitled.
You have to apply for it, provide your audited documents, and hope for the best.
Yeah, we apply. We send in our statistics on everything. All our work, different aspects of our work. We send in our income statements and everything, and we apply. Because really, we had reached such a critical point in 2022, we thought we would be shutting down because we had basically only money left to pay staff severance and debts,
Wow.
So
that is very disturbing.
we are sort of stumbling from year to year, and we have no guarantees of a subvention.
What about corporate support, private sector?
Well, we did a big push for corporate support this year. There are 1 or 2 companies that do assist us with projects. We're very grateful to Angostura because they have assisted us with projects, from time to time, and they're working on one with us now. But we don't really get broad corporate support. We did a big push to the companies towards the end of last year. But you see, they have usually established criteria for their CSR, and often it's more based on things like supporting culture or sport or community development. So we kind of fall outside of the normal criteria. So
what about the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development or the Ministry of Agriculture, who you, through your work, assist a lot, where the gaps come in?
Yeah. Well, we got some funds in 2020 from the Ministry of Agriculture when they actually proclaimed that that new amended act with a welfare component. So we are trying again with the Ministry of Agriculture. We're also trying with local government because we do assist local government, and we always have over the past years. So in some ways we have strong links there, and we do think there's a good justification for their annual support. So we are pushing with both of those agencies to get funding.
If I'm not mistaken, I think you do get a subvention from the Port of Spain Corporation because of
No,
the close relation. You don't
no,
anymore?
we don't get a subvention. What they do is if they bring in dogs, they pay us the same amount per animal as a member of the public would. Usually we ask for a relinquishment fee to help us with that. It's like $200 for a dog kind of thing. So that's what we ask the public to pay, and they will sometimes, and other times they won't. And that is what the corporation will pay. But that really doesn't assist us in covering our general operational costs, because we pay commercial rates for electricity, for utilities. We pay commercial rates, and we have staff to pay, and operations. We have veterinarians to pay. We have a lot of expenses, and what we get from the Port of Spain Corporation is only a fee to manage that particular.
Well, you had to renegotiate your arrangement there, Ms. Kuruvilla, because I know that at one point in time there was a very solid arrangement because TSPCA is in fact on corporation lands down in the back there on Macrappa Road. So
Yes.
I was part of the council when those lands were given to TSPCA, because you all were previously by Roxy roundabout, if you remember.
We were by Roxy, and when One Woodbrook Place went up, they moved everyone out. So HCL built the new facility in where we are now in Mucurapo land. Yeah, right. But we don't get any annual support from the corporations. It is a fee per dog that is brought in. Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's segue into what's happening tomorrow.
Right.
Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
And of course, it is your adoption drive.
Yes.
That's happening from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the shelter.
Yes.
Of course, in fact, I will tell you, all our pets are all adopted. The last adoption we did was we came to TSPCA and adopted two sisters.
Yeah.
And they were actually, I got a history, they were actually four of them in a box on the side of the highway by Kelly Village. They were found it was two males and two females, and the males had passed away in the box, but someone rescued them and brought them to the shelter. So we did adopt those that my parents had. We have 3 dogs at home, and one was found in Westby's parking lot, and we adopted that one. My animals, my pets are all adopted. So what can someone do to come down to the shelter? You have to come down for your adoption drive. Tell us more about that.
Okay, well, we use Facebook and Instagram to share pictures and videos and so on. So if people want to have a look, they can have a look there and see some of the animals that are up for adoption. We have currently, I think I mentioned, 127 dogs and puppies, and about 35 or 40 cats and kittens in-house. All the ones that are up for adoption would have been vaccinated. Well, everybody's vaccinated and in good health, spayed or neutered already in advance of the adoption drive. We've reduced our adoption fee to $275 for the animals that are up for adoption. They go out with a collar and an ID tag. And we've got support from VEMCO, who are actually sponsoring the adoption drive. So they have provided us with giveaways as well. Anyone who adopts will get a bag of chow and tin food and so on. And another company called Old Doc has Old Mac, sorry. They have also given us 10 hampers with pet rice and bowls and things like that. So we've got, nice giveaways for people who adopt. We will, of course, be ensuring that the home is appropriate. So we will want evidence of a secure property with shelter and so on, and that that the animal can be cared for properly. We don't just give out our animals to anyone who comes
There are
along.
requirements.
Yeah, there are requirements because we do put a lot of effort into caring for them, making sure they're healthy, they're sterilized, and that they're socialized. So we do put in effort to make sure they can fit into a home.
Yeah, you have volunteers around that go and visit these families. They did that by my parents. So and once you're approved, you can always adopt.
Well, we ask people to bring a video to show the property, the perimeter, the fencing, the gates, because we have had problems where sometimes people take an animal and then the next thing you know it gets lost, and it's really upsetting for us because we do put a lot of effort into making sure that they're good family pets.
Give the location of your shelter, Ms. Kuruvilla, for a lot of people who don't know where it is.
It's Christopher Samuel Drive, which comes off the Mukarapu Road. It's the road that comes off right between Mukarapu Secondary and the Jamaat Mosque.
Yeah.
So it's you just enter Mukarapu lands on that road, and we are just opposite Starlift Banyard, right around.
Just follow it. You cannot miss it.
You can't.
You can't miss if you're driving that road.
Yeah.
Right opposite Starlift Banyard.
Right opposite Starlift Banyard.
Yeah. All right. So it's happening tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
10 a.m. to 1.
There's a contribution of $275 that you had mentioned before. And that fee, you're getting an animal that's spayed or neutered and vaccinated as well.
Vaccinated.
All you have to do,
everything up to date. You'll get the vaccination card to take home. They all go out with a collar, and we have an engraved ID tag with the contact numbers and so on, so that and everything is done in place. And the same thing with the cats; they are all also vaccinated, healthy. We get a lot of people who are interested in the cats, so we have both dogs and cats up for adoption. And you can look on our Facebook page and so on, and you'll see some of the animals there.
Just quickly, just a little segue. I know a lot of people come into the pet butler and they ask about spay and neutering.
Yeah.
And they always ask me, where can we get it, at a reasonable price? And I always tell them to, call the TTSPCA. You want to enlighten us a little bit about that and enlighten the public?
Yeah. Well, spaying and neutering is really important. It's the humane method of population control. And, if you're going to have pets, especially more than one dog or cat, well, cats, it's essential. Otherwise, if you don't do cats, you're going to have like 20 cats roaming around your property.
Cats can have a litter 3, 4, or 4 times a year.
So that's essential.
Yeah.
So it helps to keep things under control. It's always better if you have animals. It's better for your neighbors. There's a lot less confusion generally, and noise and so on. And it's also good for the health of the animals. So we run a clinic once a week. We have a vet who comes in and he does what's called high volume spaying. That's what he was trained in. So he does all of our animals, and we also offer a clinic to the public at a reduced cost. This is heavily subsidized. A vet clinic cannot operate at those kinds of, a vet clinic is a business, so they can't offer the service at the rate we do. So really, we're catering for people who cannot afford to go to a vet clinic. So we offer the service at the shelter. We can also point people in the direction of maybe 2 NGOs that also offer subsidized rates out in collaboration with vet clinics. So that means if you live in San Fernando or so, you don't necessarily have to come to Port of Spain. Or if you live in the east, there are clinics out there who are under the program, so we can point you in the direction of a lower cost subsidized service.
Yeah. All right. So the number for the shelter is 622-1367. They're having the adoption drive tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. for both cats, puppies, dogs, kittens, you name it. I know a few people already that are coming tomorrow. One of them works here.
Yeah.
I would not call Avi's name. So but it's such a wonderful job that you do at the shelter and various shelters and various NGOs.
Yeah.
And I know people don't know that when they have, I call it sad cases, that, you all jump on and with your resources and try to help. I mean, recently was the one with the horrible condition of a white dog where even somebody offered a reward to find this dog and bring it to the shelter to get it dealt with. I know the shelter was dealing with abuse. There's so many animals that are abused. I'm talking about abuse. I'm talking about on a chain for its entire life.
Yeah.
Sun, no liquid, no food. And I knew one case a little while back where you all jumped in on that and was able to rescue that animal. I don't know what people think. I don't think a pet is something that you just tie and just leave alone. I've actually seen, and I actually stopped and talked to the individual last year, where they had a husky tied in the hot sun.
Yeah, people, it's funny, they don't seem to realize that animals have the same basic needs that people have, water, food, shelter. Those are pretty basic and a certain amount of freedom of movement. And particularly with this terrible hot, dry season we've been having, it's essential that animals have shelter and water. Those are essentials. And that people need to remember that they can suffer from the heat the same way we can. We've had cases, a couple of cases recently of people bringing animals to us in the trunk of a car, where they come, completely moribund from heat stroke. So,
what are your thoughts on the husky revolution?
Yeah, well, we never considered huskies appropriate dogs for our climate.
It is not.
And it's not just the fact that they have the thick fur, but also they are high energy working dogs. So they're not, they may be pretty, but they're supposed to be working dogs. So they need a lot of exercise. And a lot of people get these dogs just because they're pretty.
Sure, for sure.
And
their eyes.
Well, but the thing is, they are working dogs. They are dogs that they should be exercising or running or whatever it is for 1 or 2 hours a day. So people are getting these high energy dogs and just keeping them there cooped up in their backyard. So they're not the right dogs for Trinidad.
What do you need? In this country. It was the Pitbull
short-haired. Sorry.
It was the Pitbull before because they want to have a status symbol, and now they have.
Because now you see some huskies are stray dogs because they just cannot.
Yes, we've had many cases. We always have huskies in the shelter, or husky mixes, or abandoned huskies, and because also post-COVID there was a big breeding boom. People were trying to make money by breeding whatever was the popular dog of the day. So we got a lot of huskies and a lot of Malinois. Malinois are also popular. And these are high energy dogs that also have a potential for aggression. And if you don't know what you're doing and you can't train them, then it's not the right dog for you. So we've had a lot of problems with particularly those two breeds coming into the shelter. So there's a real need for education. People need to take on the kind of animals that they could realistically care for.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as a dangerous cat, Ms. Kuruvilla?
Well, I guess
I could probably answer that one.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah. Try to give them a pill or try to give them medication.
Yes.
It's called a
Try to
lion,
get
a
their
tiger, or a panther.
Yeah.
But with us, we do a lot of work with the cats at the shelter. We socialize. We have lovely children who come in and sit with them and work with them. So we try very hard to make sure that when people adopt them from us, they are nice, friendly pets, good companions.
Sita, thanks for being with us and
Yeah,
keep up your
thanks,
great
Ms.
work.
Kuruvilla.
Thanks very much for having me.